The first house my wife and I lived in from about approximately 1972 was at the corner of 150th Street and 77th Avenue in Rio Terrace, which means that at that time it was part of the city of Edmonton, but it was half a block away, well, no, 1 block away from the city limits of 149th Street, which is Quesnel. And when we had lived in an apartment in Edmonton, we of course had Edmonton telephones. When we moved to Rio Terrace in the early 70s, we had to give up our subscription to Edmonton telephones and make arrangements with Alberta government telephones, who of course had not only were the providers of telephones in rural areas, but had been the provider of telephones in the town of Jasper Place. Mm-hmm. So for other purposes, when the city of Edmonton annexed things, other utilities would become city utilities. Of course, Northwestern Utilities was not municipal. But the annexations didn't invade AGT's space.
Can you describe Rio Terrace? Was it a subdivision that had been created out of previous land?
Well, I don't know much about the history of Rio Terrace, and I haven't researched it. I do remember when there was the this is a little north of Rio Terrace now. I do remember when the drive-in theater was at 156th Street and 87th Avenue.
The Starlight.
Yes, the Starlight. And just south of there is the upper limit of the Quesnel Ravine. And as at the time we moved into Rio Terrace, the Quesnel Freeway had been built to 159th Street, but it didn't go any further. At 159th Street, if you were westbound, you just went up grade and connected to 159th Street. And it was built up, I mean, the theater was gone. I think the apartment buildings at 156th and 87th were there then. And there was a Catholic school west of the end of the Quesnel Ravine. And the shopping center at 156th Street and 76th Avenue was there. I think that what later became the Jewish Community Center was there, but it was a private club that just suddenly failed. Mm-hmm. And the Quesnel, which of course was east of 149th Street, had some houses, and the Japanese consulate was still there at 149th and 76th. And there was a bus route there. I don't drive, so I used to take that bus route, and the bus turnaround was on 149th, just south of 76th. The Community League in a previous building was there. The school was there. The Moravian Church was there. And Rio Terrace was fully developed then. An extraordinary percentage of the population worked for Alberta government telephones. It was not an expensive neighborhood, but it was a nice neighborhood. I think it had been done by engineered homes. And where we lived, there were only about 3 designs of homes that alternated. We were at the corner of that sort of crescent. There's some it's a bit like an onion. There's a crescent around a crescent. And we had a nice pie-shaped lot that was small at the front and got bigger inside. As I said, the freeway was there, and the remarkable thing was that we were only 2.5 blocks, in other words, a block south of the freeway. We never heard the noise of the freeway. But if you walked south to 76th Avenue, you would hear the freeway quite distinctly. I can't explain why the sound hopped that way. Nice neighbors in Rio Terrace, very nice place to bring up children. The school was handy, traffic wasn't a problem, that sort of thing. And the Moravian Church, or otherwise known as, I think, the Rio Terrace Community Church, also gave courses on this, that, and the other thing that were not religious. The Community League was quite active, and for a long time they raised money for their new building by holding bingos, a regular thing there. If you went south on 156th Street, past what was then on your right that club and later became the Jewish Community Center, if you went a little further beyond what was apparently the last, beyond Rio Terrace Drive, you came to another little obscure road and you turned left and went down. And that was leading you into the upper reaches of, I guess you'd call it the western end of the Laurier Park, or an extension of it along the river. Right further east, west of 149th Street, a few blocks west, the cliffs were quite steep, but children would climb up and down them, and you had a good view of Fort Edmonton across the way and so on. It's a pleasant area.
Was there a Patricia Ravine in that area?
Yes, yes. Now, if you go further west, a little west of 159th Street, in those days, you would walk west, and pretty soon there was something all covered in bush, and then you got to the end of that, and there was an airplane sitting there. And the fellow who owned that had saved. I mean, some people buy old cars they're always going to fix up. I think he'd bought an old airplane he was always going to fix up. After a long time, it disappeared. Now, right south of there are some very expensive homes. I think they were sort of in between Patricia Drive and the club or Jewish Community Center, like the Poole family and that sort of thing. Now, if you went a bit west of the airplane, then all of a sudden there was a road going down into the ravine. That's the old road to the country club. Now, today, it is obviously a paved path for pedestrians, but then it was a road. And it went down through the ravine, heading west, crossed the creek, all these ravines had a creek at the bottom, went up the far side, and then turned left. And you were then in what later became Westridge. And when we were living in Rio Terrace, all of a sudden all the people who had money were moving to Westridge, and that was the Tony thing and so on. And they didn't have numbered streets, they had named streets and so on. A completely insane naming system, but that's another matter.